You know, all around the world there are people who want to screw you and take all of your money. And I don't think that that is a huge problem if you know where to look to avoid such people. But the line has become blurred, I think, a little bit between those who want to do you right and those who want to do you wrong. Now, the first place you can look to find a good example about what I'm talking about is Redbox. Okay, so whenever a huge blockbuster movie comes out, Redbox releases several movies that are similar in nature, typically with animated films such as Disney and Pixar and that kind of thing. And so what winds up happening is, like, for example, there was a movie that came out called Brave in maybe like 2010, 11, I don't remember exactly when it was, but it was a while ago, and it was a pretty decent movie if you like Pixar. They're pretty good at what they do. But they released, some company released a movie called Kiara the Brave, with the words Kiara the being very small and the word Brave being very large. Now, obviously you can't copyright a single word and just have that be, like, have it not be okay for other movie companies to use that word. But, excuse me, but, people do that, and that's fine. And you can't copyright words unless you're apparently Mr. Donald Trump, and then you can do that, that is fine. I should probably start the episode, by the way. Okay, so anyways, I was talking about something called Mockumentaries, which basically, or was it, no, not Mockumentaries, that's something different, Mockbusters, which is movies that parade themselves as hit blockbusters that are coming out but are actually different movies entirely and are very cheaply made, poorly made. Now you can look up several of these. I remember some names. They got things like Shark Kick Panda, and they got, like I was saying earlier, Kiara the Brave, and they got like Exploring the Reef, which is like a parody of Shark Tales. Not a parody, it's more of a rip-off of Shark Tales, I believe. Though I didn't watch it, so it's really hard for me to say. Now you also have several of these movies that were made back when Titanic was popular. For some reason they decided to make like a feel-good animated film about the Titanic, a real-life event that happened like 100 years ago. I don't remember the exact day, but it happened 100 years ago, and a lot of people died, like 150 or so on the maiden voyage. The ship sank. I'm sure you know all about this because you watched James Cameron's Titanic that came out a long time ago, and you're like, wow, that was a pretty good movie. How did he come up with such an eloquent plot? But the truth is that he didn't come up with the plot. It's actually a movie that was based off of a real story. Now, interesting fact about the Titanic is that they thought that the wreck was lost originally until it was rediscovered in, I believe, the 80s, which is when it sparked public interest, because up until then people didn't even know that the ship had split in two when it sank. They just knew that it sank. They knew that there were some distress signals that were sent out by the captain of the ship, who, you know, he went down with the ship. He's a good captain. He's a good guy. You can't fault him for the ship sinking, because maybe it was his fault, maybe it wasn't. There were some theories about why maybe the ship crashed and into the iceberg is how it went down, if you're not familiar with the story. But look it up on Wikipedia, the RMS Titanic. It's a very well put together story that could easily be turned into a movie, and they did that. There's actually several Titanic movies out. I think there was one that was released in like the 50s, the 60s, and there was even one called Titanic 2. I'm not sure if that one came out before or after James Cameron's Titanic, so I don't know if it was like a sequel to that one or not, but if it was, that's really, like, kind of gross. And I don't know, for some reason there's a lot of, especially in, like, India and China and those countries, they like to make a lot of, these rip-off mockbuster films, as I called them earlier, and, I don't really understand what the appeal is, other than maybe like your grandma going to the Redbox one day to get you a movie, or some unobservant individual going to check out a movie for his family and his girlfriend to watch while he goes out to work because he's taking care of the stepchildren that belong to his wife that he married from a previous relationship, and they don't have any kids of their own, so he's taking these kids in as his own, even though she didn't tell him that she had kids when they first started dating, and he only found that out after like the 5th date. And at that point, dating's hard, so he didn't want to have to try to find a new girl, even though he wasn't too happy with the fact that she didn't lie about having kids. She just didn't tell him that he had kids. Now, if he had asked her, baby doll, do you have any kids that I should know about? And she said no, then that would be a lie. If she doesn't bring it up at all, and if he doesn't ask, then it's not a lie, I think. And although it's dishonest, and it's a very big selling point if you're looking for a relationship of the committed variety, whether or not you have children, people will want to know about that. And I don't think, I don't think it's too much to ask for to just let your significant other know that you maybe have a kid, or that you're open to the idea of somebody who has children, even if maybe you've never been a parent before, you don't exactly know how to, unless you had a brother who was 10 years younger than you, and you had to take care of him basically when you were a child because your parents were busy working all the time. Something like that. And it's like, well, I was a 10-year-old and I was basically I was a freelance babysitter who didn't get paid. Is the situation that I'm setting up right now. Not to say that that's how it happened for me, but it's very similar to what happened for me, Joshua. So, it's good to take care of your family, especially when your parents start to get up there in age and they start to forget things like your birthday or the social security information or how to open a door. Then it's at that point you have to be like, okay, well, Dad, do you want to go into a retirement home? And he'll be like, no, I don't want to, because I think I'm functioning very well yet. And to be honest, I haven't retired, so it would not, in my any good conscience, be good for me to go into a retirement home, because I think that would be dishonest. And I don't think it's dishonest to go into a retirement home if you still have a job. I mean, a lot of those, if you've ever gone to Wally World, that's what I like to call Walmart. That's my pet name for Walmart that I came up with and nobody else has ever said before, Wally World. They usually have greeters at the front door, and the greeters tend to be older people because it's a pretty easy job for older people to do. Because, old people are usually friendly, and if they're not friendly people, then they probably died years ago. And, so it's good for them. They get the social interaction that they don't have at home because their spouse passed away, or the children live in Michigan and they live in Idaho, and they don't get to see each other very often, so it's like a good way to connect with people that you don't necessarily know, even if it's just for a little bit. You're not really talking to them, having a real conversation, unless, of course, they approach you and decide to have a conversation with you. At that point, it's okay to engage them in conversation, but if they don't bring it up, then it's just kind of awkward, because what if you go to Walmart with your family, you're like, okay, this old guy's talking to me and I just want to do my shopping. I want to go to get a bag of Doritos and the 6-pack of Bud Light and maybe some chicken nuggets for the children because I'm too lazy to cook a real meal, but they do need to eat because they are my children and I love them very much, but this old man is making it so I can't go buy the things that I want to buy and then go to the self-checkout where I'll have to wait in line because it's the middle of a Sunday afternoon and there's too many people at the store right now, even though a lot of them are just carpooling there, and it's like, what do I do now? Do I go here, or do I go to the smaller store down the road that doesn't have all the stuff that I want, even though they don't have as much business and it would take less time for me to check out, but they don't tend to have the Tyson brand chicken nuggets that I like to eat, which is what I usually get, even though they're sometimes kind of expensive. If I get the chicken wings, those are pretty expensive too. They got flavored barbecue and honey barbecue and all that kind of stuff, and it's like really good, but I don't want to spend that much on it every time, so I wind up just getting chicken breast and seasoning it myself with my own breading and barbecue sauce of choice, or just going out to Buffalo Wild Wings or something and picking up something there because they have takeout now. You can order takeout from Buffalo Wild Wings. You just gotta go there and pick it up, and then they'll have it ready for you when you show up at the restaurant. And yeah, that's how you get dinner these days, I guess. That's how people do it. So, anyways, yeah, if you're an old person, you can go work as a greeter at Walmart, or you can, just golf all the time, because I guess that's what old people like to do. I've never really been golfing. I've been miniature golfing. It's kind of the same thing, except not really, because you have to use a driver or nothing like that. Unless you're a computer scientist, get the joke. Drivers, computers, you get it. It's understandable to you because you know all about computers. You're a smart person, and you've probably had to install a webcam or a microphone, or maybe even just a USB controller that didn't come standard with Logitech software for some reason, that you had to go out and find drivers for it because it was some Steel Series Rumble pack that you couldn't figure out how to get to work, and then you find out that you have to press the button in the middle to turn off the analog mode so it's just digital, and at that point it's like, I don't even want to play this game anymore. Why did I do this? It took so long to set up that I'm just kind of burnt out on the whole subject matter, and it's like, okay, well, what do I do now? Alright, I know, I'll go and just read a book or something, because it's a lot more cognitively challenging, if I were to say so myself. Now, if you are if you're like a Philistine like me, I just read things like Hemingway pretending to be pretentious, and like pretending I know a lot about books and stuff, even though I don't really read that much because I spend most of my time watching Glenn Beck on Fox News or something like that. I don't know exactly what people like that like to do, but Glenn Beck, he's got a lot of things to say, and he's got a crazy opinion on a lot of things, and I like to listen to him, but sometimes he goes a little bit overboard on the things that he talks about. He talks about how, like, reptilians are taking over the White House, and we have to, like, get out our blazing saddles and start shooting people with guns and trebuchets and trowels, even though those are like swords or something. You can't really shoot them at people, but you could if you wanted to. I'm guessing you could probably do that pretty easily if you were so inclined. Not that I've ever tried, because I've never wielded a sword. I have wielded a machete, although I think wielding might be the wrong term, because wielding makes it sound like you're some kind of maniac, and I just used it to clear the brush in my backyard. I didn't use it to chop anybody in half. I would never do something like that. That's a little bit too much for me. That's barbaric. If I was to have to go on a killing spree, I don't think I could ever do anything as bloody as that, so I'd probably wind up just strangling people to death, or maybe doing the Jeffrey Dahmer route and just dissolving them in a large vat of acid. Now, what you can do, and this is my personal favorite because this is the most elaborate thing I've ever heard of, is you can set up a something called a murder mansion, which basically the top 2-3 floors of the mansion are just a weird maze that lead to dead ends and trapdoors and stuff like that, where people wind up getting trapped, and then you like capture them, kill them, and then you just sell the skeletons to colleges for biological research purposes. The students like to look at skeletons, I guess, because they're spooky, and students like to get spooked. I think that's what it's all about. I don't know exactly, but that would be my best guesstimate, because that's a good word to say, guesstimate, is why they like to do that, not because it has any sort of medical advantage, because we can just use x-rays to look at skeletons. We don't have to actually cut people open and dissect their insides, if we don't want to do that. I certainly don't want to do that, but I would never, if somebody else is so inclined to do something like that, I would never fault them for that, unless it was for nefarious purposes. That's another good word, nefarious. That's a word I like to use, is nefarious, so that's how I will be describing things that are evil now, okay? So, good, we made that decision. And it didn't even take more than 5 minutes. I am proud of myself and my timing and my lack of getting sidetracked, because, I'm just such a smart individual. I like to deal with that. I just disappeared, okay. Alright, I understand it, and it makes sense to me. Actually, none of this makes sense to me. I don't know about robots. I think robots are scary. This game's all about robots doing things like jumping from buildings and skydiving and cliff diving and writing letters to the editor about the things that they print in the newspaper that they don't necessarily agree with, because maybe they printed something radical, like there's an Asian basketball player on the college football team, the basketball team, the football team, the basketball team, and he does real good. He's one of the best players on the basketball team, and he's Chinese. And they write in the paper, as the headline, they write that a chink in the armor. Now, if you know anything about metallurgy, you'll know that a chink is part of armor that I believe holds 2 different parts of it together. Maybe, I'm not sure exactly. I haven't done a lot of research on the matter. Excuse my language. But yeah, I think that might be the case. Is that holds 2 different parts of the armor together. But the chink term is also a very racially charged term to refer to Chinese people, and it's in bad taste to call people that, and it's been in bad taste to call people that in the newspaper, even as a joke, and you might get a lot of flack for that. You might get your newspaper publication shut down, and at that point, what do you do? So anyways, I think we're about going to wrap this up here for today. So if you want to come back tomorrow, that'd be great. If you want to come back in 2 days, that's even better. Just take as long of a break as you need to from me, because I don't know what I'm doing half the time, and I like to sound like I do, but honestly, I'm just scared and frightened. I'm a lonely little boy. So, anyways, thanks for watching. I've been SparkleDart. Goodbye. Mwah.